We're in speaker view right now, so I'm just going to throw you in the gallery if that's okay. Hide non-video participants. All right, you. All right. So she said we're live on my Facebook page. Hello, everyone out there. This is Charles Allen, and I'm just checking to make sure we're live on Facebook before I start. But we have a great show ahead for you. We are a little bit late just because of the fact that we had some technical difficulties. So I'm just checking my page to make sure we are live. And once I find out that, I'll start with your your programming, and we'll go from there. So we are live, and I see 7 of you are viewing, and there might be a little bit of lag, but I'm so excited about tonight. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Let's get into why we're here tonight, why I'm doing this live. No one asked me to do this. No one has paid me to be this person. This is something that personally I wanted to do on my very own, just so that we could actually find out who we're voting for on Tuesday. Now, with that being said, I do want to start the video off and let you know that I did actually reach out and extend an olive branch to every person in the 95th district that are candidates besides Jim Graham, and I don't have a way to contact him. And with that being said, Carly Hammond was the one who Amos did call me back, but it just didn't connect that way. Carly Hammond is the one that responded and was like, yeah, I want to do this. And it was supposed to be a debate in the beginning, and it didn't end up being that, which is fine because I had my mind made up. You know, when we started this thing off, it was actually just going to be, you know, me and Carly and the rest of the people that wanted to participate. But I kind of had my mind made up already. I already knew that for me, you know, this was important for me so you guys can know why I'm sticking my support behind this candidate, okay? So with that being said, I want to make sure I give out a shout out to Drew Campbell, who helped me with my monologue for today. Drew, I'm sorry, there are some jokes that did not make this view just because of the fact that even though you wrote it, if it comes from our mouth, it could offer some, some connotation. So with that being said, no further ado, let's go ahead and get started. If you can, share the video. I want to go ahead and go right into it. I'm really excited about tonight. I thought about it. So hello, everyone out there, and welcome to the first episode of Black News, okay? Black News Late Show. It's going to have a late night vibe. I want you guys to know about the show and kind of understand that you too can be involved in this show. This is my show. This is something I'm going to invite people to. If you have announcements that you want to make, welcome to the first show of this. The name may change. You'll be able to watch us grow. You'll be able to watch our set happen. You'll be able to watch everything. This is something that I believe is my mission, to share the news from my point of view and also a little bit of propaganda because I'm a funny person. So hello, everyone out there. Welcome to the first episode of Black News. Tonight, I'll be doing a Q&A with candidate for the 95th district, Carly Hammond. I know a lot of you are wondering how a robust Black man like myself could be voting for a girl who looks like a manager of a Yankee candle shop. That question and your questions will be answered later on in the show. But I'd like to begin by shedding some light on her opposition. So we'll start off with Jim Graham. He's on the ballot as well. And we'll go ahead and move right along from Jim Graham because nobody has seen Jim Graham in this community doing any work since he was a Republican. I don't even know what he looks like. So with that being said, the next in line, speaking of Republicans, is Amos O'Neill. Used to be the former Amos O'Neill. Speaking of Republicans, there's a lot of red flags I have about you. The only thing Democratic about you is your blue shirt and your tie. Amos, you're taking that Blue Lives Matter thing too serious. Next on the ballot, we have Brandell Adams. Oh, I'm sorry, Brandell Adams. I wouldn't be surprised if you check white on your census too. I went to elementary with Brandell back when we were in 3rd grade in 1999. I gave him an illicit photo, which somehow ended up in the principal's hand. So I think Brandel's slogan should be selling brothers out to the white man since 1999. If Brandel wins, he'd only prove that you can do anything in America if you follow their rules. Next up, but certainly not least, Clint Bryan. Dear Lord, do you ever open your eyes? How are you supposed to read legislation if you can't see through those cheeks? Hey guys, we're going to have a great show for you tonight. My name is Charles Allen. First of all, I want to let you know Drew Campbell wrote part of the monologue tonight. I definitely want to take your questions. So if you have a question that you have for Carly Hammond that you want to share with us via Facebook Live, please go ahead and shoot that question in the inbox and go ahead and let me know what you would like to say. If you are viewing, please share. Please let us know. And by the way, I love all the candidates. I know most of them personally. I'm here just to shed some light. This is a monologue for fun. This does not represent this person's views or their thoughts. It was written by Drew Campbell and myself. This is just how we're going to start off the Black News Show. We're going to start off with a monologue. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to a girl who I respect so wholeheartedly. Not only do I respect her, but I definitely believe in what she's talking about. And that's why I bring her to my live Facebook show so that she may have the opportunity to share with you what got me involved in voting for the girl that looks like a Yankee Candle manager. So with that being said, I've never put anybody's sign in my yard. I've never did that. That was not my thing. The only person I remember even seeing remotely in my parents' yard was Carl Williams when he was running for state representative back when I was a kid and I didn't even have the right to vote because I wasn't old enough yet. So, but I had a meeting with Carly at one of our favorite restaurants here in the city of Saginaw, here to give out some shout outs to Baldwin's Barbecue Smokehouse Grill. Listen, I had a meeting with Carly there. I said, hey, are you hungry? She was like, yeah. I was like, well, you should come get some food with me. It kind of didn't happen like that. I wanted to talk to her and find out what was her plans for the 95th district and why was she running and where she was from and what made her so enthusiastic about this movement. So I've taken questions from my friends, people around this city to find out, who this candidate is. So I'm going to invite Carly to go ahead and turn on her camera and her audio. She's in my waiting room, and we will bring her on now. Well, hello, Miss Hammond. How are you?
Good. I'm really good. I just got some coupons in the mail for Yankee Candle, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to go and get myself a spiced chai latte bath bomb. And just put my feet up after August 4th and kick it.
Oh, well, that's great. I'm happy that you got some coupons for Yankee Candle. Listen, when that joke was written, I died on the floor, okay? Because first of all, I had no idea Drew was this good at what he was doing. And I had asked him to come over and just, hey, Drew, help me out with a monologue. Because I kind of even Colbert. And obviously, as you can see, there was jokes that I did not mention tonight because I was like, I don't want to lose.
You'll get there, though. You'll get there. Jokes are something you can ease into.
Well, it is something you can ease into. I think I'm a funny guy. It's also something that I just wanted to, hello. I guess this is.
You said it's late night feel. It's late night feel, right? Okay, thank you.
I forgot to get a Bruto. It's
what if it's actually just carbonated lemonade? I put this through my seltzer machine.
It's looking like a summer shandy to me, though. I'm just saying, it's definitely looking like a summer shandy. Okay.
Actually, to me, you know what this looks like? Plausible deniability.
Hey, and we got a lot of candidates going around here using plausible deniability. I think that's the truth.
It's very true.
So, all right, Carly, just without further ado, I spoke to a friend of yours and a friend of mine, and he had a specific question that he wanted to ask you to start this off, which, because this friend is very important to us, I feel like that's the best question to start with. So, and I'm going to make sure I mention his name because he deserves a credit for that. Deshaun Hayes is going to start off our very first question of the night. Many of you may know Deshaun Hayes from Spotted Snagit. He's a Black activist. He's also a jeweler, and also a stylist here in the city of Saginaw. He does a lot of work for this city. And sometimes, unfortunately, he's not heard by the masses, okay? He's heard by the masses as far as his business is concerned. He has built his platform diligently. But in this city, we don't give him the credit that is due because he doesn't come wrapped in the package that everybody thinks should be wrapped in to take serious. And I think that's part of the reason why I wanted to do this, because you, Carly, have not been wrapped in the package that everybody would take serious, or the package of I'm just gonna pull those.
Well, let's say I wasn't wrapped by people who have been controlling things for a very long time. So a lot of people see that and they're like, maybe not.
And and I think that's the funny thing about this race. And I think everyone had like an opportunity to take some time off because of coronavirus. So taking that time off has allowed people to be silent about certain issues. So, and certain issues being like, instead of telling us what you're doing in the city to change it, you tell us how long you've been working in the city. And we need to get besides like how long you've been working and your resume. We didn't know what your plans are if you were to be able to sit in the 95th district. With that being said, without further ado, Deshaun Hayes wants to know, Carly Hammond, what have you done for the city of Saginaw so far?
Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff that happened this year, which I think is very, very important, but I'll get to that last because I'll go time period wise. So for the city of Saginaw, I always say this, I got my start off in Flint doing activism, which sure I'll talk about it later, but when I started doing more activism work and moving that into Saginaw, first of all, it was very strange. I didn't start in Saginaw because Saginaw doesn't have the same access to organizing and community organizing than Flint has. There's a lot less nonprofit investment to actually building organizers from the community that lives in Saginaw. It's not really anywhere in Saginaw, not even close to the degree that it is in Flint. So the access to doing organizer work isn't really there in Saginaw. But what I did start doing with NextGen, basically, NextGen was a voter enfranchisement and engagement, specifically around youth. And they hired me as a field organizer. And I said, I want to go in the city of Saginaw where the places are most disenfranchised. And so I built my own program, and we knocked on the east side, we knocked on the west side. And we technically were supposed to be targeting young people. But young people crosses over into disenfranchised all the time. So we were just knocking all over the city. And for me, what my concern was is not to shake my finger at people and be like, you guys need to vote. Because again, I just came from Flint, another traumatized community where a lot of people don't vote because they say, well, it doesn't matter who I vote for, my water is still going to be poisoned. And found the same stuff happening in Saginaw, the same reasoning. So we built our program around establishing, why people feel this way, what to tackle, what issues we can be present with. I did a lot of work in that first year, finding out what organizations were doing what kind of work in Saginaw. The answers are a lot was left to be desired. Let's just say there's a lot of organizations who are good at telling what they're doing, but once you scratch the surface, the work that they boast about isn't actually being done, and thus the low participation. The gaslighting is everywhere from every single issue in Saginaw. And then from NextGen, we helped register tons of voters. I also spent a lot of time in the fall at SVSU in Delta, specifically with young people, finding out a lot of the disparities there. But going to every community meeting I could to try to learn about the things people say versus the things that get done on the ground. Because again, I would hear something very different in those meetings as a representative of NextGen than I would in the streets, where we're going to people's doors, asking them what their experience is like. It's a very genuine experience. And then, so I kept going to the meetings, even after NextGen. I kept doing door knocking with different programs now in NextGen with Voters Not Politicians, a lot of other organizations trying to do group on the ground. I helped with signing people for absentee voting in the city again. And then fast forward to this year, where we started seeing more and more stuff around policing. And this is really where I started doing the sort of activism that I'm used to. And what I mean by that is doing, holding protests when we needed to do protests, helping organize community meetings, holding power meetings with elected officials. And power meetings are different from regular meetings, because power meetings, you bring an agenda and you bring your power, and you get something done. So I was invited to a couple spaces, and as a result, a lot of people know who I am, a lot of people know what I'm about, and a lot more people really don't like me. A lot of people in power really don't like me. And this is not new. I'm very used to this. Again, in Flint, they did the same exact thing, where the people who have been very close to power or access to power for a very long time, they don't like people coming along who aren't a part of their system, who didn't come up the same way that they did, who they feel like they can't control. Okay. They feel like they're not beholden to anybody. So it makes them scared, it makes them nervous, and sometimes they just seriously feel disrespected by my presence, because they don't think that I went through the proper channels to be able to get there. However, if you ask them, the proper channels usually mean talking or working with other people, again, who've been here for a very long time and haven't pushed any sort of change. So
okay, I respect the answer to your question.
Good.
And you mentioned protest. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to be sure, because I know you won't mention this and I know you won't say this, and that's okay. But I have to, because of the fact that the election is Tuesday and everybody viewing is from the city of Saginaw, most likely. Let's not forget that the most attended protest in this city for the protesting police brutality regarding George Floyd and the way that he was murdered in front of America, 8 minutes and 46 seconds, this man exasperated for breath, calling for his mother, saying, "I can't breathe." And still, no one looked at him as American enough to stop with police force, police brutality, excessive force. Why? And the reason why I say this, because I feel like a lot of times your packaging messes up your message completely. Mm-hmm. And we're going to keep saying packaging until I actually call the nail on the head. I'm not necessarily ready to do that yet, but I'm sure some of you are out there and you can view. So I got the opportunity the first time I met Carly Hammond. So just so you all kind of know, this is not like a friendship. Like now it is, we cool now, but this has always been business first. Is that respectfully so? We only connected because we figured the first event that I've ever went to was a Tuesday protest in the city of Saginaw, where there was over 2,000 people marching across the bridge. Mm-hmm. And I met this lanky white girl who, again, I say looks like the manager of a Yankee Candle. And she says, "Hey, I need to know if anybody wants to chant lead." And I was like, okay, well, I know I got a big voice. I can chant lead, right? And I was like, well, I want to be a chant leader. I want to be a chant leader. I want to be a chant leader. And that was my first experience with her. And I left that protest. She said that she was the facilitator, which facilitator means that she's facilitating, making sure people don't lose their life in this protest, because we're in protest of police brutality. So while she was facilitating, she didn't hire, but she got police liaisons available so that they may be able to communicate with police if there was a situation where, they handled this differently than they should have, like the situation on Sunday. And that's all I'm going to say about the situation on Sunday. But with that being said, I met this girl who I did not like at all, not even a little bit. I left there. I went to Deshaun Hayes' house after the protest and told him, I don't know who this girl Carly is, but I can't stand it. See, facts are facts. It's okay to say that you don't like somebody and yeah. Are you crying?
No, I'm just wiping off the SPF 50 that was still there this morning.
Carly don't care. That's what I think that's what I like about Carly Hammond is Carly don't give a doggone about your feelings and how you feel. So Carly facilitated the biggest protest in this city. We made history that day. You all were there. And she didn't attach her 95th district candidate slogan, name, title to the protest. Okay? Now, when everybody got upset was when they found out she didn't attach her name to it and said that she was doing it for political gain. Am I wrong? Or am I right?
Yeah, that is what they said.
Okay, because they said she was doing it for political gain, but yet and still, like I said, she didn't attach her name to it. So how could she be doing it for political gain? Now, with that being said, I want to move on to the next question because that protest started my life and started where I knew I would stick in this movement from here on and here out. Carly Hammond organized, facilitated a protest. She was able to organize with Black people too. And most of them were in major charge, but Carly's been organizing in Flint for a very long time. So she knows what it is to organize against injustice, okay? So Carly, you got to help me with names because Cece, Indigo, Simone, Mercedes. I went to school with Mercedes. I know Mercedes. We had Elvin that day who spoke, who did a very fantastic job. There was a host of pastors. So I just want to make sure you all know that behind the scenes, not attaching her political gain to it, Carly Hammond organized and facilitated that protest. With the help of everyone, she is a great person to create teams and not feel like she has to be the boss and not feel like her word is the only word. She's able to do it and do it for the betterment of the community. And that's why I came behind her, not just because of the protest. There's other things. So we're going to get right into the next question. And just a reminder out there, if you have questions for Carly, please send them to me. Please let me know. You can hit my inbox. That's easier than the Facebook stream because I'm not actually looking at that. I'm just checking in on that. So the next question is from my friend who does a lot in this community as well. Now, when I talked to you, originally this was going to be a debate. Carly, can we get that out of the way? Can we please talk about the fact that I came to you and I sat down at Baldwin's and I actually came to you to do a debate with the 95th district candidates. That was the whole point. This point was not about just you. It wasn't about, singling out the one white girl that's running for state representative and making some money off of her. No, actually the whole original idea was we needed someone who was not afraid to talk to these candidates like they should be talked to, like they actually are going to be elected and they actually have to earn our vote. And not just tell us what we want to hear, but you can tell a lot about a candidate just by the way they react to what goes on in the city. Am I right? Okay. Yep. Now, I'm just saying because she's the most sophisticated party. Next question comes from Ramon Kelly. Now, I had asked everyone if you wanted to leave questions, I put that in my story. I asked Ramon personally, though, because Ramon is one of the ones who was screaming for a debate. He was like, 95th district, we not voting for y'all unless y'all do a debate. And I was like, oh, he wrote a whole post about it, right? Now, I was already doing that. I had already met with Carly. And I'm going to be honest with you, I called my first candidate and I was just discouraged. I sent inboxes to the other two candidates. I'm not going to mention their name. This is not a drag fest. But I was discouraged because this candidate said the young Black people in this town need to get with the older people in the NAACP so that they may be able to affect change in this city. And I was like, whoa, okay, wow. Let me take my glasses off of that because did he just say the young Black people in this town got to get together with the older black people in this town, that's the only way they're going to be able to affect change. I'm sorry, but if you don't understand that in 20 years, some of those older people won't be here, okay? That's why it's not okay to just say that that's the way. The way is always through a channel. The way, no, we're here now. We've all been protesting for the last 3 months, and all of y'all have been there. Well, not all of y'all, but we'll go ahead and give you the benefit of the doubt. You may have, showed your face, but we've been protesting for the last 3 months saying, as millennials, we don't feel heard. So I did respect the NAACP putting on the Millennial Forum. It was a beautiful thing. Great. But I want people to know why I'm voting for Carly Hammond. And since we're here, we might as well know why I'm voting for Carly Hammond. Ramon Kelly said, and Ramon Kelly, someone I respect, he does plays. The main thing he shared this morning, he said, I asked him after he shared, I said, thank you for sharing, but do you have a question for her? He says, yes. Gentrification. How will she combat that? And that is Ramon Kelly's words verbatim.
Mhm.
I'm gonna mute my mic,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna let you go ahead and
Right.
gentrification. Okay.
Here we go. So, gentrification is the biggest plague in Michigan public policy right now because it is the goal, the single most potent goal of all of our policies around economic development that have been in play in Michigan for the past 30 years. Don't let anybody tell you this started with Snyder. This started way before Snyder. Actually, it started Reagan years, but in Michigan, Granholm was massive on gentrification, repackaging, segregation, good old redlining to push it out to the masses as a way to move wealth from certain people to other people. And in Michigan, and again, I try to explain the problem before I explain the solution. This is me talking about the problem. So gentrification caused the Flint water crisis. Gentrification caused Detroit to be the way that it is. It brought Detroit to the brink of bankruptcy, but then gentrification also disallowed Detroit to go into bankruptcy and instead gave it emergency management, gave Flint emergency management. And who do they have do emergency management in Flint? Some of the same people who'd been screwing over Saginaw for quite some time. So here's the whole thing about gentrification and how it's affecting Saginaw. We are desperate for money as people, and we are convinced that the only way we are allowed to ask for more money in our pockets to pay for the outrageous prices of healthcare and housing, that we have to ask for better jobs, not better pay, but better jobs. That is what the only question we have been allowed to ask. However, obviously the answer is not just better jobs, because you're condemning every single person who works in fast food to make a starvation wage, right? The answer is better pay. But even Democrats haven't liked that again since Granholm. So they talk about better jobs instead because it's easier for them politically. And what that has manifested as is called the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, or MEDC. So I'll call it MEDC from now on, so you know what that is. Michigan Economic Development Corporation. It is through the Michigan government. It is a public-private partnership hybrid. Think of it as a slush fund filled with a bunch of rich white people trying to figure out how to make themselves and their rich friends even richer. But then they can say that they helped improve all of these communities. So what they end up doing, both, and again, the story is the same in Saginaw, Flint, Detroit. First thing going way back 1940s is our land use laws. This is important because it determines what is a city and what is a township. Way back when they were, Flint was still booming. Basically, there was Flint and then there was the fringes, where the poor blacks lived and where the poor whites lived. And GM loved to control that because even though the poor white areas, still had no plumbing or whatever, they could still pollute in the poor Black areas with absolutely no repercussions. And they wanted to continue that. So even as these areas grew in prosperity, they still wanted to keep that segregated to be able to have the control in Flint and control where the pollution went. So they lobbied our state government using segregationist tactics, and they basically forbade cities from annexing outer areas. So what that means is in Michigan, it's harder than in any other state to grow the lines of your city. Why that matters is because once those lines are set for a city, you get a bunch of businesses leaving immediately because they know there's no growth in that city. And then you get basically neighborhoods. You have your good neighborhoods, you have your bad neighborhoods. And then the bad neighborhoods encompass in the city, and then the good neighborhoods are pushed out to the township because that's where the businesses go, because that's where all the segregationists go, that's where the bank do their redlining, that's where the schools do their, what's it called, gerrymandering. And then there's political gerrymandering on top of all of that. So that's why we have areas in Saginaw Township that are more densely populated than the city of Saginaw, but we're not allowed to annex those areas, even though those people are dependent on city resources and city infrastructure. So that matters because right now in Saginaw, what you have is a one-way leaching of resources from the city to the townships. And how they do that is basically, so a lot of people in the city work minimum wage jobs or very low wage jobs, working for retail joints, fast food joints in the townships. And then the people who own those businesses live in the townships. A lot of the business people who work in the city live in the township. Even teachers who work in the city live in the township. Police officers, a lot of public sector officials, a lot of these people live in the townships. And so it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then what we get in places, MEDC, Michigan Economic Development Corporation, comes in and says, oh, I see your poor urban area. How about we give you some better paying jobs? And what they do to fix your city is they give a rich corporation who's already very wealthy all the tax money that they want, all of the tax credits. They are saving so much money moving into your Renaissance zone, your brownfield authority, your diamond, your green space. There's bunch of names for it, but essentially they give these corporations sweetheart deals to move in, and then they do the red ribbon cutting. They have 2,000 jobs. Isn't this amazing? And then 2 years pass, 5 years pass. Either they haven't hired the people that they say they're going to hire, or they leave. They don't do anything. So in order to fix gentrification, you have to attack the root cause of the issue. And you have to actually invest your dollars into where it matters. So what gentrification says is we're going to clear you out using a land bank, block by block by block, and sell it to the lowest bidder. But whoever is going to purchase more, how do I say this? Campaign contributions. They buy off politicians, they get their friends elected, then those people give them tax dollars, tax credits in order to move into this area that, oh, wow, we just cleared it out. Look at that. We just bought over all these homes. We just foreclosed this entire block. I wonder how that could have happened. And then they move in those businesses. Those business owners get really rich, give some back into campaign contributions, and then everybody walks away at the end of the day, except for the people who are left in those communities, who have to close the schools because they can't afford it, who have to leave the roads crumbling because they can't afford it. So how do you fix gentrification? Sorry, I'm losing my wires here. How do you fix gentrification? By calling out corruption, by not allowing the richest person in the room to make the decisions, by not even allowing them in the room to begin with. This is what happened in Flint again and again and again. They always would go with the economically cheapest option. You're talking about people's lives, they're talking about their bottom dollar. Every single time. Stop allowing the business owners, and I don't mean local business owners. I don't mean locally owned businesses. I'm talking about corporations, mega corporations, these profiteering people who go from town to town to town, tax break, tax break, tax break, until, kingdom come and their CEO is making $1 billion out in the Cayman Islands, right? Don't even let them in the room. Stop. They are not the smartest people in the room. They are not here to fix this thing. They're here to profit from this crisis when they can. They will not improve our lives, and we need to kick them out of negotiations. None of this at all. And so basically not being afraid to make people very, very upset, because they will be upset at you. They'll tell you, but you're, oh, that you don't know how much this person has invested in this community. They're a pillar of this community. They've given us so much money and so much time, and they're so generous to put their business here. They could put it anywhere else. Well, tell me how much they're paying in taxes. If they're not paying anything in taxes and they're not hiring anybody locally, how are they investing in this community? That's the question.
Wow. I don't know. Ramon, thank you for the question. What I will say,
I get very upset about gentrification.
I know you look mad.
Listen, but here's the thing: gentrification kills. Gentrification kills. Gentrification is the mindset that is boiled in white supremacy. That was emergency manager law personified, is gentrification. And when they poisoned Flint, why did they do it? To save a buck, right? They switched over from using Detroit water to using the river water. And the reason they did it in the first place is because they built their own pipeline called the Caragandi Water Authority pipeline, used $300 million illegally to pay for that pipeline. And who got paid for all those easements? Oh, it was the politicians and all of their friends who for the last 4 years have been buying up that property strategically, because they knew the politicians they were paying off were going to pass a bill to get the easements to build the pipeline. That's what Flint water is about. It is about politicians and their rich friends getting richer off the backs of people who are now poisoned. And that is what almost every single major public policy has been about in terms of economics in the past 30 years in Michigan, is how do we do more gentrification?
Wow. I mean, wow. Let's not get off of that. I want to make sure that, because that's hot for you.
Yes.
let's continue to let it be hot for you, because the second time I met you at a protest for, was that the third? That might have been the third. It could have been the second or the third, but it was a protest for one of our good friends now, Regina Simon and her husband, Mr. Bounceback. And they have the Think Change group now too, because they obviously, they found a noose in their car. And we found 5 different nooses around the city of Saginaw, people reporting it. And because we're talking about the city of Saginaw right now, what are your thoughts on racial injustice in this city and how our council handles it?
Okay, so all right. Okay, so
I'm gonna turn off my camera for this and mute, just so
yeah. Baked into gentrification, and again, baked into the fabric of our entire society, which I don't think I need to explain this to the people watching this video, but racism and segregation has never gone away in Saginaw. It's always been here, continues to this day. And there are certain things that we don't, and by we, I mean people in Saginaw who consider themselves, I don't want to say political elites, let's say politically involved, want to sort of not talk about all the time. Or if they talk about it, they'll say individual racism versus systemic racism. Because once you start talking about systemic racism, you start talking about power. And once you start talking about power, you talk about who has power, who doesn't have power. And then you get some problems. Because if that's, your friends who donated $1,000 to your campaign, who has power, which oftentimes it is that person, then you're causing an issue. But challenging real structural racism takes a lot of guts, because you are challenging the people in power. Because if the system is unjust, that means that the people who are unjust are naturally rising to the top of the pyramid, right? They're the ones who are buying off politicians, who are making their ways through committee after committee, having their voice heard, having their seat at the table, and you know, buying their way there and power maneuvering their way there, and they like to stay there. So I never talk about individual racism without talking about systemic racism, because you are talking about every, you know, what white supremacy is built into almost every negative experience that we as a society are feeling right now, because that's our experience. We live in the system of white supremacy. So if you're talking about that, at a certain point, if you're in power, you're also criticizing yourself and how you got there.
I'm sorry, I don't want
Right.
to interrupt, but I don't know if everybody knows what white supremacy actually means. And I don't think anybody knows what white supremacy means coming from a white girl. So with that being said, I want you to make sure you nail in on the white supremacy aspect and how it affects our lives to today. I think that's a second co-op question. I ain't trying to interrupt at all, but I want to make sure you get in. Don't just say white supremacy. Make sure you say what white supremacy does, and make sure you say how white supremacy helps you. I'm sorry.
No, white supremacy, to me, white supremacy is a system of injustice that includes all the isms, right? Racism, sexism, homophobia, classism, and professionalism, all of those things to keep some people in power. It is again, when I say white supremacy, I mean this, the triangle, right? Or the pyramid, where you have a lot of people at the bottom, very few people at the top, and it's an unjust system allocation of resources. And it pits people against each other, against their human instincts in order to maintain power, in order to keep a handle on resources. What it means for me, again, a way that manifests is privilege. I am privileged as a white woman because even in my worst experiences, I have the advantage of being a white woman to advocate those, to navigate those systems of power, right? I can ask, you know, the question that comes from me asking for help is received differently when it's coming from someone who looks like me, who has to wear SPF 50 when they go to the beach, right? So it's just a different it's just a different experience, and I think that ultimately, also, in anyone's mission, using whatever privilege you have in order to tear down white supremacy is the ultimate goal, and yeah, that's my definition. You're muted.
I know. I just got there. I was like trying to figure out. I found a question for you in our comments, and thank you guys who are continuously bringing up comments. I want to make sure we read this on public forum because people need to see this in this video. Hattie Norwood said, and you know Hattie very well. You've worked closely with her. Hattie's someone that organizes in the city as well. She says this about you. It's not a question. I just want to make sure we got all the support here. She doesn't take no for an answer. Carly puts in real work. No matter how anyone feels about her, she will go with what's right, what is just every time. I think that's a big deal. This is not just me saying that this is who you are, but this is what other people are saying. Now, since we're speaking about who you are, and I think it's great to talk about, I'm going to take one more questions from two. But I think it's great to talk about where you're from because we have not done that yet. And before we talk about that, I want to take Cecilia Oliveira's question because she's viewing live now. And she said that, how do we promote the growth of real social services in Saginaw, Michigan? That's Cecilia Oliveira. That's Cece, is that correct? Okay.
Olvera, yeah.
Olvera. Excuse me, Cece, messing up your name.
And first I'll say, coming from Hattie, that means a lot because Hattie has done a lot of work herself in this city, and we worked together, and we had to fight some fights to make some gains to start doing real change, because people in power even when it's something positive, they will fight against it if it's change. Because, and even if, again, I'll say this, there are quite a few people who are in the business of doing good. They're in the business of doing good. And if you present them with something better, you do it better than they do, they will fight against the greater good because they like their good.
They didn't design it. They didn't do it. They didn't put it together.
They like the good that they get, I don't want to say paid for, because sometimes it's not even their job. But yeah, oftentimes, yes. So that means a lot coming from Hattie.
Okay, before you go on though, because you was real cute about how you touched on that. What it seems to be is that if you are not a part of their organization, if you are not a member at their church, they don't want to hear what you got to say. If you ain't Black, you don't have a valid point on racial injustice, systemic oppression, gentrification. If you're not Black, you can't change that. How? And that's the problem that I have, because your name does not have to be attached to a protest for the protest to do good. Okay. And I find in this city, if you're not the organizer, or you're not the co-opter, or if there's not a co-op story of how you're going to get some more tides or how you're going to get some more members, it's not right, it's not good, and it's not the way we flow. You have to be orthodox in the way you move and the way you do it. And that's just the way I've been seeing since day one of protesting here, that there is such a secret society of even Black people that they only listen to their caucus, their secret constituents.
Well, but Charles, I'll go even further, because even if you are a part of that group, that will only get you so far. Because as soon as you start criticizing the power structures, you're not a part of that group anymore. Something gets mixed around, some gets misconstrued, and or sorry, you missed the invite to the Zoom party, but I don't know where it went. Must have sent it to the wrong email this time.
Right.
You sort of get shown the door. So it's not, and again, but also coming up through that base, that's why, like, when somebody says that, these outsiders are welcome here, it's the same thing with the squad, right? AOC, Rashida, Ayanna, and Ilhan in Congress, right? They say, the Democratic Party says, we love Black and brown people, we love minorities, we love women, we're the party of minority empowerment. But when it comes to those women having some real criticisms about how the Democratic Party does things, suddenly they're not real Democrats. Suddenly they're not in the group. So it's more, and it's because, and again, the Democratic Party didn't want any of those women to win in the first place. And in Detroit, they're actively organizing to get Rashida out right now. But those power structures, if you criticize them, they'll kick you out, but they will say, oh, I only listen to these people, again, that my power structure has curated so that I know they're not going to have real criticisms. Does that make sense? But back to, yeah. So, and I want to get to Cece's question, which is about resources, right? Public resources.
Go ahead.
So there's just so much that Saginaw is missing out of in terms of federal resources and statewide resources. And a lot of it is a cycle that sort of feeds into itself. But a lot of it is competition between nonprofits, or rather a lack of competition. So again, and some of it's a problem overall with the state of Michigan and how we handle nonprofits. But when we have grant funding, we usually funnel it through, a series of nonprofits that we know do good work in that community. However, there is also the nonprofit industrial complex, which gets certain grants, a lot of grants, and then they give it to the smaller nonprofits. And in that way, they have a lot of power and a lot of control and a lot of money and resources in their community. And they don't always spend it to the best interests of the community. Oftentimes, also, the way grants are written, they want to show improvement in their numbers. What I mean by that is, if you are a nonprofit organization. You get a grant for saying that you helped X, X number of people. You helped 100 people today, right? So if it's easier to show growth or to show that you helped people because their problems weren't as complex or complicated, or those people are less likely to fill out your survey at the end of the day, they tend to avoid those areas, which are often the areas that need the most help. So you have all of this problem with the way that grants are written in competition and number gathering and data. And there are areas that seem to have figured a way to do this. But again, it takes work, it takes power, it takes knowing the system and the resource, and it takes fighting for it. And fighting for it in that sense means you have to stand up against the power structures who like things just the way that they are right now. So again, it comes down to not being afraid to make those challenges in both public and behind closed doors when a lot of those decisions are made when that legislation is written. Hopefully that answers this question.
I believe it did. And we have in the next question. We're going to keep the questions coming. This is a just so you all know out there who are just joining in, if you're here, there's 27 people viewing. Please share the video, share on your personal page, share in these groups that you are a part of so diligently. Also, put your questions in the comment section. If you want a faster answer, or if you want to make sure you're getting heard, please send it to my inbox. I am diligently looking down to do that. The next question, it actually comes from a friend of mine, Eric Lorman. He's actually an associate of mine, actually. But what he says is, how can you better help the development of mental health services within the city?
So comprehensive mental health reform is the inevitable answer to the question right now. Because back in the Engler administration and with the late 80s, before that, we used to have inpatient mental health dedicated hospitals for people who are having crises. And because those aren't there anymore, now we have police responding. We've been talking, again, I feel like most people have heard this thing, like we've been talking about it in terms of police reform. So a lot of people know what I'm talking about. And that is the eventual goal, to get that back to really comprehensive mental health services. But to be completely honest, the best way to increase access to mental health is increasing access to healthcare. You do that by getting single payer healthcare, y'all. Single payer healthcare. Jesus Christ, we need to have it. If your candidate does not advocate for single payer healthcare, you need to be with a yard sign in front of their house in the morning, at night, yelling at them, why don't you believe in people getting healthcare? Because it is ridiculous. It is 2020. We can't be having this discussion anymore. Okay. Now, in terms of working within some of the framework that we have right now, not single payer healthcare. Again, you have to fight for those mental health dollars in the state legislature. That's where it's allocated in Ways and Means. So you're going to have to you're going to have to, I'm going to skip the BS political talk here. You're going to have to argue with members of your own caucus in the Democratic Party in order to get that funding where you need it to go, which means you need to start collecting real data. None of this BS data that some of the nonprofits collect, again, in order to fulfill their own grants. So remember that problem I just said about us not getting the real data because those institutions need the data to back up the fact that they need more money because they need to fund themselves to run. So legislators are using that skewed data to determine the need of a community, right? So if in Saginaw, we're only basing the results off of skewed data that these organizations have leaned on in order to, get whatever resources they need for that year, we're not getting the whole picture. So it all feeds into, how we look at grants, how we look at funding, but also stop lying about numbers. Stop it. Because you are hurting whatever legislator is in that place in order to fight for more funding. And I think one thing we can do a lot better is regional networks. We can work a lot more with Detroit and how they handle their mental health services, because Detroit is on a path where a lot of the citizenry is getting real representation. It's better every year. It's definitely not perfect. They've got so much corruption in Detroit still. But Detroit itself is a voting bloc. It has power and it uses it. It wields power to get better resources for its citizens. Saginaw can be the same way. We can be a nationally recognized community. We can get resources from a lot of other avenues we aren't right now because we haven't advocated for it in the ways that helps build power from person to person to person in this community. So again, I like to give comprehensive answers because that's not just, I can give you a BS answer, like I can give you a 1-year plan answer, but I don't think that's what you're asking me for, and that's not what I'm going to give you.
I personally like the way you answer questions. Speaking of, because you touched on something that was one of my questions anyways, and I want to go ahead and get right into that because then the last segment of this, we're not going to run over. We're at 52 minutes right now. I just checked on Facebook. And this show, Black News, is going to be an hour. So I want to make sure we wrap up, but I also want to make sure everybody gets to answer questions. Affordable health care is a big deal for me, myself personally, and over millions of Americans around this country. Unfortunately, you're going for state representative. I know that honestly, you can affect this, but you can't affect this in the way that all right, well, this is what I'm going to say. What do you think needs to happen? How do you think we can change it? What can we do to make it better? And what can we do to ensure that every American is covered for healthcare? I know.
Yeah, I mean, the answer is single payer healthcare, and we can do it in Michigan. I'm not saying it would be easy, or it's even likely, or it's even probable. And if I win this election, that doesn't mean there's going to be single payer healthcare in Michigan because you would need a majority in the House and the Senate. You'd also need a different governor because Gretchen Whitmer, I think it's her dad, is like on the board of Blue Cross Blue Shield. So like she's not, they're not doing that. So yeah.
And you're also gonna be talking about my governor on my live now. You're not gonna come for Big Gretch on Charles Allen's platform.
You can go look at the campaign finance report yourself. But what any greater access to healthcare is what we need. Michigan is dangerously teetering. This is what I always say about people who want to talk politics with me. Michigan is the Bible Belt of the Midwest in terms of our state laws. They are terrible. We have worse environmental regulations. We have it worse in terms of access to healthcare, transportation funding, school funding. Of the Midwest, Michigan, we've got terrible, terrible policies. You can point to gerrymandering that made that possible. We've had Republican control in our state for quite some time. But again, we also had a really, really bad problem with neoliberalism in the Granholm administration, which really pounded down in terms of our state laws and how they benefited private corporations rather than citizens. So any movement towards improving healthcare, I am for. Into people call it socialized medicine. Yeah, it is. Get over it. Any step forward into socialized medicine is what I want. With the healthcare industry, take the whole thing, throw it in the trash, light it on fire, put it in the dumpster, and just walk away. Okay, we don't need it anymore. It doesn't help people. My mother was a nurse practitioner for like 35 years. And let me tell you, access to healthcare for us was even difficult, even her trying to navigate the system. So it's not okay. We're not in a good place right now. The time when I was on Medicaid was the best healthcare I've ever received in my life, the best health insurance experience I ever had in my life.
Pause.
Yeah.
Pause. You said the time where you were on what?
On Medicaid.
So you was on state Michigan Medicaid?
Yes, I was.
And where you from? And where you from again?
Frankenmuth.
Okay, and you was on state Michigan Medicaid. The people need to hear that. This is a grassroots movement. This is not, I got the biggest support from one of the biggest politicians in Saginaw. This is grassroots. Carly is the underdog. I just want to make sure we know that. So people that are saying that she is just a white girl from Frankenmuth, that's not the truth. Carly's the underdog. So let's tell the people about you, ma'am.
Well, yeah, and I'll get, I'm just gonna go into it because a lot of people ask me why I haven't addressed this publicly, because people are like, well, she's from Frankenmuth, and it, like, to me, it's interesting that that's used against me, and I know why it is. Like, I'm not blind to, I get it. I grew up in Frankenmuth. I freaking get it. Um, I will say this, it is a white ethno state because it is specifically designed by and for white people to have their own little house on the hill. That's the whole thing of Frankenmuth. That's why it was formed. Literally, just look at it, okay? And but it's interesting to me that that specifically for me is used as a negative for people to cast aspersions on my character or what I believe. Because for me and my personal experience, and this is the reason I don't talk about it because it's hard for me to talk about, this is very personal. Frankenmuth was hell, and for my experience. Because white supremacy shows up in a lot of ways. And it shows up in paternalism in a way that is toxic. It shows up in communities that will not support you for the fact that you are a person challenging a power figure. And some people can probably catch on my language and know where this is going. But I will say this. I moved out when I was 18 because I had a toxic family that I couldn't put up with anymore. My sister is unable to be a prosperous person in society because she is so psychologically damaged. And for me, the only way that I could be my own person was to leave. And even before that, my experience in Frankenmuth, and I use the word privileged a lot still, because I had the gift of a public education where my hard work translated into being able to be seen as successful in the society the way that we look at it right now. I pushed myself in school, I pushed myself in sports, I pushed myself in volunteering because I wanted to get the F out, get out. So when I left for college, I never went back. I haven't spoken to my parents in 3.5 years. I got Medicaid when I was 19. I had to transfer my car to my boyfriend's name and give him the money for the insurance because I couldn't afford it. It was $400 a month for PLPD. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I couldn't, like, I remember, well, for a period of time, I didn't have any car. So for a year and a half, even in winter, I would bike everywhere to the grocery store. And again, in November and January, because we didn't, we didn't have a vehicle. And when we did, they were, because we could only purchase, rusty old cars that were used. They only lasted a few months. So at first I was able to live on campus, but FAFSA screws you over because FAFSA doesn't count you as an independent adult. Even if you claim independent on your taxes, FAFSA doesn't recognize you as an independent unless you're married or you are over the age of 24 or 25, maybe even 26, something like that. So I got screwed out of a lot of money from that system. And so that, again, like, from college, I went straight to Flint to try to do something different with my life. One of those cars that was kind of a crappy car, lost control of it in the snow, really bad accident. And I decided then that I was really unhappy with my life because I was just running away from my problems from a community in Frankenmuth that didn't care about me, that just wanted me as their little star, that just wanted me as their good kid who did everything right, and they could just put me as a trophy on their shelf. And I realized I was still being that trophy, even away from my parents and away from that community that had done me so much harm. And to heal, in order to really heal and to feel like I could do something about it, was to get in the everyday practice, I don't want to say get in the business because that's not really what we're talking about, but to get into the practice of trying to help people. trying to be as empathetic as I could, reflect the empathy that people never had for me as a child, see people's problems and say, I see you and I'm going to fight for you, instead of, well, that's really your own fault. So that's where I come from, in terms of, that's where my fight comes from, was to get very real about it again. My fight comes from having to stand up to my dad every single day so that I wouldn't get my ass beat. That fight comes from having to say to myself every single night, you are an okay person. You are loved. You are welcome in this space. Having to create that own space for myself at age 12 because I had no one in my life that said that to me. And again, I know I was able to get out because of the privilege of that house on the hill. I had a library 2 blocks down. So even though I would spend so much time there because I didn't want to spend time at home. And that's how I am able to have access to those skills that society deems as, again, necessary in our system of white supremacy to get ahead. So yes, my childhood was very much so shaped by white supremacy. And that's how I feel about it. It's not, and again, it's not something that I really want to bring up in a forum where you have a minute and a half to speak. And I know people sort of like side eye at me and get glanced about it and get angry about it, like, because this is the ultimate, this is what's said under the breath, right? She doesn't understand struggle. She doesn't understand oppression. She doesn't understand hardship. And what I will say again, I never want to say I understand all hardship, because I don't.
Right, we know that.
I understand.
You're not Black, so you can't understand the Black view. We know that.
Exactly.
But that doesn't mean that you can't change what's going on right now with racial injustice. And that doesn't mean that we vote for someone based on the color of their skin, but how they can elevate and move us to the next step in this movement. So, and that's why I wanted you to be able to talk about where you're from, and I'm not cutting you off, but that's the whole purpose of you sitting on this platform. And since you touched it, we need to touch it, because we have 5 people running for the 95th district. Jim Graham is one of them. Brandel Adams is the other. Amos O'Neill is the other. Clint Bryan is the other. And then you yourself. Now, what I noticed is whenever I mentioned your name to anyone in the city of Saginaw that were of my same color, of my same skin complexion, they said, and we're going to keep this really short because I'm getting ready to wrap up. They said that you are the white girl from Frankenmuth, and you can get on that train if you want to. And this was just last week, right? So my thought and my theory was like, why? Because my dad, many of you don't know that I was raised by Pops Crawford, Own Wise Guys in the city of Saginaw. He's given a job to pretty much everybody in this city. My dad was all about helping the underdog, okay? That was his life, okay? And he was Italian. So my thing is, Black people have been running the 95th district for how long? I mean, people of color, let's say people, because we know Vanessa Garrett, I mean, obviously, people of color. It is not like no one, of color can't get elected in that position, right? So why are we acting like that's the only merit that we're voting on? Because I love Black people, and I'm all about Black being my politics. That's a little shout out to you, Jeff Bull. Black is my politics. That is what it is about. Like, I am a Black man in America, and I experience things from a completely different view. Completely different view. I was just reading the comment and it looked like it was going the other way, but I look at things from the view of my son being able to walk and roam this earth and not be affected by his color, okay? Now, one thing I could say to you, Carly, is that you've had a lot of issues, you had a lot of struggle in your life, but skin color only became an issue when you tried to run for the 95th district. Am I correct?
I would say in Flint it was an issue, but
Okay, well, I mean,
that, yeah,
let's talk about Saginaw. Like,
yeah.
has skin color been something that people are using to completely edit you out of this race? That's what I want to talk about. The fact that, because I've heard the word white savior, and I want to make sure I mention that, because saying that someone is a white savior because they're white and they're running from a majority 95th district is chocolate. That's unfair, and that's racist. That's racist. That's completely racist. Not listening to somebody because they have different ethnicity than you. See, I'm for a progressive America. I'm for an America that doesn't need affirmative action to get people to hire, people that are literally qualified for the job. Because what affirmative action does is they hire 3 and they done, right? They just reach their quota and that's it. So bring it all home, because this is where I want to end. I want to end with, how do we change police brutality? How do we defund the police or reform the police or retrain the police with a 95th district candidate that's endorsed by the police?
You don't.
You don't.
You don't.
Because before I even logged into the computer tonight, before you answer the question, I want to make sure everybody knows that the FOP just now, today, endorsed Amos O'Neill. Is that incorrect? Am I wrong about that?
He solicited their endorsement months ago, but they've been re-upping it for some reason.
I mean, well, they would re-up it for some reason if you sat on a forum and said that you literally didn't have any. I mean, maybe I should have went hard on my Drew. I should have used the jokes because I didn't even use the jokes, Drew. I didn't even use that joke. But I'm just saying, like, when I seen this endorsement come out, and I seen him on the forum talk about the Sunday event, which we will not mention that event by name, but we will mention the situation. When I seen that, I was like, that real interesting right there. I don't even think I've seen that in a long time, where I don't know if I've seen that before. So how do we change police brutality with a bought candidate? Because that might be what happens. So can we? Is it possible?
Let me say this. So 2 days after George Floyd was murdered, and here's another aspect of it that's very important. 2 days after George Floyd was murdered and his video came out, the Democratic Party of the state of Michigan sent out an email to all the Democratic candidates with the Fraternal Order of Police endorsement. Now, they do this with a lot of endorsements. The state Democratic Party sort of gives candidates a heads up, and they send you sample answers to the questions that the Democratic Party does. So you as a candidate don't even really have to read them. It's already written for you, because they want to make things as easy as possible for us. And they didn't leave out FOP even while all this stuff was going on. So there are multiple fights happening on multiple levels, and you have to understand who's your friend and who's not your friend. And the people who are not your friends are the ones who are just going with whoever has the most money, whoever, is easy enough to pair with at the time. Even though they know there's structural issues, if it's not being called out at the time, they don't have a problem with it. What they won't tell you is that a bunch of Democratic candidates in the Democratic Party filled out that FOOP endorsement. They filled out that FOP, FOOP, whatever. They solicited their endorsement. A lot of them have that endorsement. They just took it off their public websites because of all of this stuff happening recently. So it's about knowing who your friends are and knowing who your enemies are as well, because my enemies are the people who are stagnant, who do not want change, and who have been profiting from people not being able to even access change for generations. Those are my enemies, right? And those are the people who don't want me to win this office. Those are the people who don't even want to see me 100 miles within elected office and will work very, very hard to keep me away from it. They don't want to deal with me. They don't want to deal with you, Charles. They don't want to deal with people who are willing to question the systemic structures that put those people at the top. That's what it's about.
Wow. Good, Carly. Good job. There is another question. I want to make sure we get this, and then I'm going to wrap up with some announcements. And I want you to stick around for those and do your final address to everyone. And I'm going to ask my last question, but I do have one more question that is literally on the Facebook page. Just give me 1 second. I got to open it up. By the way, I want to make sure we say this too. Like, Carly did not reach out to me to do this. I reached out to Carly. I just got to make sure I keep that trend because this is something I wanted to do. No one is paying me to do this. I said, Carly, I want you to sit on my platform. Would you be willing to do it? And Carly Hammond said resoundingly, yes, I will do it. All right. And a lot of people said that, Carly's using me to profit and get political gain. But let me tell you something about that. Carly has never one time asked me to support her. She has never one time asked me to support her. She's not yet asked for my vote. I don't know when you're going to ask for my vote, but she about to ask for y'all vote in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, I'm going to give Carly 60 seconds just to address Megan Ruth's question. She asked that, and then we're done with questions for the night. But listen, I'm sure Carly, after she's state rep, will be willing to sit here again for you to ask questions and do town halls, because that's what Carly's about. Carly's about being involved in this community and not leaving you on red when you're literally reaching out to figure out how you can change your community. And that's why I'm voting for Carly Hammond. And if you're not voting for your candidate for those reasons, then something is wrong. Don't vote for your candidate because a big church organized a whole event for them to look at that candidate and make that candidate their trophy and then tell you to vote for them because that's the right thing to do. And if you get on the Carly Hammond train, that's the Frankenmuth train. But I'm sorry. You need to vote to who speaks to your heart, because in a couple of months when that person is in office, they are going to change. Even you are going to change. But the difference between you and them is you realize the job at hand, and you realize that I'm going to be knocking on your Impala. I'm going to be knocking on your door, and I'm going to be saying, do you remember that forum I did with you? I'm going to be keep holding you accountable because you have been able to be held accountable since this point. Is that fair?
Yes, and I'm surprised you remember the make and model of car that I drive. I'm a little bit worried.
I'm sorry. You don't know. You don't know me, but like I judge people by their cars because I used to sell cars.
I live in a used Impala with the air conditioning out, so it's been a fun summer.
Yeah, cause see, like remember that one time we was doing some work and I was like, I got air, and she was like, I'll take the air. So. With that being said, I want to address Megan Ruth's question. 60 seconds, Carly. You get 60 seconds for this one. And then I'm going to do my address and my close and my announcements. And then you're going to address the people and tell them why they need to vote for Carly Hammond. Because I don't hear you say that enough. And I need to hear you say that on this forum. And then we're going to close this thing down by 10:10. No later than that. Okay? All right. So the question is, what about resources for those who are felons with stereotypical upbringing that brought them to where they are today? That have the worst time with housing, food, jobs. What are we going to put in place in the Black community so that we don't have these stereotypes anymore? Megan, that was a very, very, very good question. Yes. Give me some questions that I like. Take 2 minutes. I'll extend the show. Okay. Take 2 minutes. I'm the host.
That is like your question included half of the answer. Right?
Yeah.
Because we're talking about stigma. We're talking about moral paternalism. That is white supremacy baked into every single facet of our legislature. We are obsessed with what's called means testing. That means like, oh, do you need help? How poor are you? Like, how poor? Can you prove to me how poor you are? How poor are you? Can you show me all your bank statements? Oh, by the way, fax them over because we know all you poor people have fax machines. It's terrible. It is terrible. Happens all the damn time. Again, this is what happens when their Michigan legislature is comprised of a bunch of rich people who are only accountable to other rich people. So how do we change that for Saginaw? First, we need to call out the organizations publicly who use those systems, so they need to stop using those systems. And as a state legislature, I will do that and work with those models again in Detroit, the ones who are doing resource navigation correctly to be able to do that. Again, that's working within the system that we currently have. I believe in building a completely different system. Republicans tried to, actually, they did pass it, Medicaid work requirements. That is terrible. That is specifically so that people will be cut out. They did that the day Gretchen Whitmer shut down the schools for COVID. So while she was trying to worry about saving lives, they're worried about making sure people are working during a public health crisis. Yay. So that means we need to, basically pull up our pants and get ready for some big fights, because there are going to be very big fights about public assistance. I believe in expanding public assistance reform. Yes. Welfare, because it's freaking hard until we actually address our housing crisis. Again, the two biggest things, actually no, there are three massive things in our economy that are overly inflated that cost us all of our money. One, healthcare; two, housing; three, education. Until we address all those three things to be able to be affordable on a minimum wage salary, then we need to expand our welfare system to actually take care of people, and so that they're not just living day to day to day, wondering when they're going to die, because that's what the experience is like for people on the welfare system right now. It is absolutely terrible. But to make sure people are actually able to live and not punishing them even when most people have jobs. So annoying. Major beneficiaries of most of our welfare programs are children. So yes, you have this right. And felons, and ending the stigma, stop getting felons there in the first place, because we need to reform policing, because we need to reform criminal justice. We need to stop that. Again, gentrification means putting more and more people in jail, because places, and I'll say this, employers like Frankenmuth get tons of tax credits for employing felons, and then those businesses give campaign contributions to the politicians, who then make poverty illegal, right? They're the ones who are crafting the policy to put those poor people in jail, and then they are receiving campaign contributions from the people who are employing those people for a tax break. That's systemic injustice for you. That's white supremacy for you. So this means attacking it from every single angle. Megan, you are probably already 100% there with me, just from the nature of your question.
Hey, listen. Thank you, Megan, for that awesome question. Thank you, Carly, for answering that question even before I told you to. All right, guys, I have a couple of things on the docket. I am going to announce something that's going on in our city right now, and I want to make sure we get that out of the way, because I told this person I would. I also told this person I would not mention their situation currently right now, and I'm not going to mention their name at all. But I want to let you know, because a lot of people want to know where you go to protest, where you go to do these things. Well, happening in the city of Saginaw, August 2nd, which is tomorrow, until August 8th, okay? There's always someone at the table at Jeffers Park. The Ghost of George Floyd will be hosting a table sit-in at Jeffers Park, which is public property. It is legal for them to be there all day from 8 a.m. to, I'm going to make sure I read this right, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. The Ghost of George Floyd will be hosting at the table. There's always someone at the table at Jeffers Park. Many of you don't know who the Ghost of George Floyd is, but you can look them up on Facebook and follow them. Make sure you do that. I also want to make a public announcement for the legendary Cherie Williams Crawford, who happens to be my mother. Her brand new album is coming out on the 22nd. Wait, hold on. I'm about to get in trouble if I mess up her date. But let me see here. What we got, Mama? What's the date? All right. That's coming out on the 22nd. She posted it for me too. I'm bad at this, and I'm like part of her. Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm right. August 22nd. It's going to be an epic event. Of course, it's going to be at the Queen's house. Ticket information will be posted on my Facebook page within 2 days. And it is going to be a social distancing, intimate concert for the release of her 6th studio album, international recording artists all around the world. That is all for public announcements. Let me tell you something. Black News Late Show is your place to exploit your business, to talk about your how you want to change the community. You are more than welcome to inbox if you would like to be on this show. You are more than welcome to be. We're going to be starting off with a soft run. This is our absolute first show. We're not even sure about the title of the show. This is our absolute one. I wanted Carly Hammond to be here. I want to let you know who's coming on next week to talk about Africa and talk about racial injustice. It's Dr. Edward Jones. He's a gentleman from this city who has been very influential. He is he's a therapist. He is in the military. He serves our country. So he's going to be on the show next week. I'm going to get a couple of other people to come on live. But at this time, the stage is Carly's. Carly, you got about 2 minutes, 10, 15. Tell these people why they need to go out. What day is, where if they haven't registered, where can they register quickly?
Yep.
What day to come out and why they should vote for Carly Hammond.
All right. So first of all, if you're not registered to vote or you're unsure, first go to the Michigan Voter Information Center, MVIC.org, I think, but just type in MVIC in your browser to check to see where you're registered, polling location, all that information, check it out. You can't register right now, but you can register on election day. However, you have to go to your clerk's office to do it. So find out where your clerk's office is, register at your clerk's office, then you go to your polling location to vote. So you can do it. It's a little bit tedious. You need an extra drive in there, but you can vote if you're not registered. Just register, same day registration. Okay, so voting is, of course, August 4th. It is this Tuesday. Please show up at the polls, wear a mask, of course. We're going to be at some polls doing some poll greeting, but please, I hate soliciting myself, so this campaign has been very difficult to tell people. I love listening to people's opinions and issues, and I love giving people solutions, but when it comes down to the thing, here's what I'm going to say. My name is Carly Hammond. Please vote for me if you believe in systemic change. If you believe that the problems we are having and experiencing here in Saginaw are part of a bigger manifesto and manifestation of gentrification, of white supremacy, of power, and it's of course, lives are on the line. And from my experience in both Flint and Saginaw, I can tell you that there are people who are trying their very, very hardest to stop change in its tracks, to punish people for trying to make change, to castigate them, to make them outcasts. We have to stand together and we have to demand better for each other and better for ourselves and better of our elected representatives. The seat isn't just something that there's no real power. I wouldn't be running for this position if there wasn't real power to be had in this position. There is an opportunity for real change in Saginaw. Vote for real change August 4th. Vote for me, Carly Hammond. And you can bet come August 5th, regardless of the results of that election, I'm standing right here. There's anybody who's annoyed with me right now in Saginaw the way I'm trying to get change, they're going to be hella annoyed with me on August 5th. So regardless,
annoyed with me.
hella. Sorry.
Okay.
So I need that hella with the side of diet Sprite.
All right. Well, Carly, I just want to thank you again for coming out to this live forum. I feel like we've been talking about it for way too long. We finally just jumped off the cliff and did it. I'm so thankful that you're willing to answer these people's questions. You answered my questions. You answered Deshaun's. You answered Ramon's questions. Deshaun Ramon. It was kind of hard. I couldn't get it out. But listen, guys, I also want to make sure you know that you can tune in every week on Friday at 10 p.m. will be our normal host time for Black News Late Show. If you have announcements you would like to make for the Saginaw community or the nation's community, you can please contact me and I'll let you know how to do that. Guys, I'm so excited because it's the first one and it was a success. We've actually had 30 people viewing the whole time, at least 20. We've dropped down once. I've been watching those analytics, and obviously this is something you want to hear. if obviously some of you want to know, please, please, please get out and vote for the candidate that, no, this is my show. Vote for Carly Hammond, baby. Vote for Carly Hammond. Vote for Carly Hammond. Vote for Carly Hammond. All right? Do what you do. If you want change, if you want something different, you want something new, you need to vote for the person that you actually see doing the work, not just wearing a suit, because the suit has nothing to do with the fruit inside it. Okay? The suit has nothing to do with the fruit inside it. You need to vote for this girl that looked like she managed a Yankee Candle, because she's been through real struggle. She's been through real issues. She's been through real problems. She actually is not talking from a place of, oh, I know how we can change this, but I don't even live in that area no more. She's talking about the fact that she is actually trying to break this system so it can be better for her as well. Am I correct?
Yes.
Absolutely. So with that being said, vote for Carly Hammond for 95th State Representative. Equity and justice for all is her slogan. Equity and justice for all is her slogan. Guys, thank you so much for viewing. You folks have a wonderful night. We're going to turn off our cameras, and Carly's going to go ahead and go and do what she does best and get ready to win this fight, right? All right.
Absolutely.